From the studios of Cheshire TV in Keene, Hampshire, it's The Men's Room, a show by men, about men, and for everyone. Sponsored by the Monadnock Men's Resource Center and hosted by Damien Licata and Forrest Seymour.
Hello everyone, welcome back to The Men's Room. I'm Damien Licata, this is Forrest Seymour. We're here to talk about men, masculinity, men's issues, subjects of interest to men and interest to probably other people.
Yeah, and we have a great guest today. I'm really excited.
Terrific guest.
It is. It's going to be good.
Yep.
It's going to be good. But so this show's sponsored by the Monadnock Men's Resource Center.
That's right.
Which also sponsors a drop-in support group for men every Sunday night at 25 Roxbury Street, and we'll say some more about that at the end of the show. Also, the URL to our website will show up at some point, probably on the lower part of the screen, and you can get more information there about that.
That's right, and you can see our program also on YouTube.
Yes, indeed.
And if you go to the mmrconline.org website, there's a link there that will take you to the archived programs.
That's right. All the past shows are available.
Yeah, that's right.
Website, yeah.
That's right. And I have a little surprise for you, Forrest.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
One of our avid viewers has bestowed a gift for us.
Oh my gosh! Look at this! Look at this!
This is a men's room cap.
Wow.
Complete with I don't know if the camera can pick that up, but it's got little sparklies around.
It is very
really
fancy.
Lovely, I think.
So is this an anonymous giver?
This is no, it's not. Well, he may want to be anonymous, but I'm not going to let him get away with it.
Yeah.
This is Tim Stillman, who is some of the folks in the community may know because he's very active in the community and in environmental issues and so forth, and also a heck of a guy, and he has. He actually, he went online and ordered these for us.
That's amazing.
And
maybe we should sell them we should sell not just I'm not selling this one, but others of this style.
Well, selling them might be one way to get rid of them, but no, I think it's a great thing, and it kind of goes with my New Year's resolution to man up.
Man up. There you go.
Yeah.
It's very manly.
Yeah.
So you could be out driving the tractor.
That's right.
Big machinery of some sort.
Yep. That's right.
Now, I don't know if I can wear it through the whole show.
I think it might be distracting. Because they're just so.
I'm used to the lights glaring in my eyes too much. So,
right.
Yeah. Well, that was very nice of Tim. Thank you, Tim,
put them there so
for
folks
doing that.
can admire them throughout the program.
That's really wonderful. Wow.
So yeah.
Does that mean we have a fan club?
Well, we have a fan.
Our viewer, our one viewer. All right, that's good.
Actually, it's great to go on YouTube and see the number of views that those programs.
We're getting 10, 20, 30 views per day.
Hundreds.
Yeah, overall, hundreds. Yes, hundreds.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
it's great.
Yeah, so it's terrific.
So, do we have a minute, or should we just go right to our guests? Do we have a minute?
Well, I think we ought to just sort of recognize and touch on this recent news story that happened out in Utah. Am I right?
I think so.
Yeah,
yes.
There was a shooting in a mall. Mm-hmm. A young man, 18 years old, walked into a mall, heavily armed, and just randomly started gunning people down.
Right, and that's always upsetting on lots of different levels. When I hear that report and I hear the word random, I bristle a little bit because it doesn't seem entirely random to me. Because this is a guy out there doing it, and these are always guys out there doing it. It's not like some random phenomenon.
Yes.
It's virtually always men.
Right. There was another random shooting where somebody walked into the boardroom of a company and shot down 3 or 4 of the board members as well.
Yeah, just recently.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
And it's disturbing. It's upsetting. I think that the media, I hate to say, kind of loves these stories in a way, but I think the piece the media usually misses is the gender factor in who the shooters are. These shooters are men. So what is that about? And we need to have a conversation nationally, not just here in the men's room, about what's up with men, that this is the way they are expressing their frustration or angst or whatever it is. They're picking up guns and killing people.
Yep. And this young man, he was clearly under some stress. Just by virtue of how isolated his existence was. There were folks in his neighborhood who had never seen him. I think they had gotten there was an interview with somebody who lived directly across the street and had never seen this young man, didn't know there was a teenage boy living in that house. And never talked to anybody on his job. Never, I mean, whatever was going on with him, you know, he was unable to reach out. And you know, the fact is that there are a lot of people that are suffering in silence, I think, in this world, and don't do this also. But you know, what is it about men that leads them to pick up a gun?
Well, we'll have to come back to answer that particular question, but I don't have the answer. I don't have the answer.
Today?
I do have an answer.
Okay.
Though. I have an answer to the question of what can we do about this to some extent, and then what can men do.
Okay.
Well, one thing men can do is on Saturday, April 14th, the Monadnock Men's Resource Center, along with several other organizations, the Monadnock Center for Violence Prevention, Keene State College, and others, is sponsoring the Men's March to Stop Rape, Sexual Assault, and Gender Violence. It's going to be great. It's going to be here in Keene. And what's greatest about it is that as many men as are willing to get to wear women's shoes. It's called, the other name for this is Walk a Mile in Her Shoes. And the idea is that men will sort of get a little empathy going for women's experience by wearing their shoes for a 1 mile walk. Starts at Keene State College, ends up down at the Railroad Square. Right,
we're going to go up one end of Main Street, on one side of Main Street, cross up by the square, and come back down and end at Railroad Square.
That's right.
In heels.
In heels, and the men,
and there'll be first aid available.
Yes, that's right. That's right. There will be, and I think all the men who walk are going to get T-shirts. We're sort of working on that. But it's going to be great, and there's going to be registration information. We'll have that in the weeks to come as how to register.
It'll be a lot of fun, and it'll also raise awareness for a very important cause. That's
right. So let's move on to our guest. Our guest today, who probably has things to say about all these topics, is Shawn Shea, Shawn Christopher Shea, who is a psychiatrist in this area and also internationally acclaimed speaker and innovator in the field of suicide prevention and mental health. His two previous books, previous to this one, which is called Happiness Is, which we'll be talking some about today. His previous two books were the Practical Art of Suicide Assessment, a guide for mental health professionals and substance abuse counselors, and Psychiatric Interviewing, which are considered classics in the field. He also has published just recently a new book called Improving Medication, what's this word I want?
Adherence.
Thank you. I can't read my own handwriting again. Improving Medication Adherence, How to Talk to Patients About Medications. He is the director of the Training Institute for Suicide Assessment and Clinical Interviewing, and an adjunct assistant professor of psychiatry at the Dartmouth School of Medicine, has a private practice, lives in New Hampshire, was the commencement speaker at local Antioch University, and we're delighted to have you here.
It's a treat to be here.
Really,
I'm looking very much forward to it.
So tell us a little bit about your book, Happiness Is, and sort of what you're saying in there. I mean, I know it's been a lot of buzz about it lately in this area.
Well, first of all, I want one of those hats. I just want to go on record. I want one of the hats.
That's true. We probably should give our
I think we should offer them online.
The book is a book of philosophy. It's sort of like, if you like the book The Road Less Traveled. It's not a self-help book per se, but it's a book that looks at what makes you and I tick, and hopefully does it in a way that's provocative and fun. And one of the main things I like to focus on is the idea of what happiness is, but also what our human natures are like, and what it is about our human nature that determines, you know, how happy Damien can be or can't be, or how violent someone might be, as you guys were describing a little bit earlier. And so that's, in a nutshell, the book is about that human matrix and the way we are all sort of interacting.
Now, this is an interesting thing for me, and what I found so appealing about the book was that it was this way of sort of conceptualizing these important elements of a life. And how very often we may focus on one or two. But it is, you know, it's not typical, I don't think, for people to sort of you know, pay attention to all of these other areas.
The matrix idea being that there are all these different aspects, sort of a grid of different pieces to our lives that we all need attention.
Well, I think it's absolutely the truth. I mean, I think it's the way it is, and it's not the way that it's frequently taught to us as we try to understand ourselves. We sort of understand ourselves as little individual units running around the universe, but actually we're all interrelated, and I could view Damien as an individual unit, which of course you are, and a delightful one, but at the same time I can view him as a moment in time where the universe's processes all intermingle at one intersection and create what we call Damien. I'll give you a little bit of an example of that. I mean, I like to call it the human matrix, and the wings of the matrix are all these different elements of who you and I are. So for instance, we're a biological matrix. So Damien would not be the person he is right now if he had severe thyroid disease. Wouldn't be able to concentrate, wouldn't be listening to, might not even be here because of that. But in addition to his biology, he's also his psychology. So as he's hearing me speak, he's sort of running this through all sorts of filters about what his beliefs are, his perceptions, the way he problem solves, and that's all a part of who Damien is at this instant. He might be different by the end of this interview. Because there'll be new psychological approach.
I'm sure we all will.
Yeah, maybe not for the better, but who knows. Then Damien is also, and this is where it sort of goes beyond our skin, because I think there's this notion that happiness is all the way we think, and I don't think that's entirely true. There's all sorts of interrelated things that determine our happiness. So his intimate relationships, who aren't here, okay, but they are having an impact on him, whether it's a partner, a spouse, a son, a parent. And they are creating at this very moment how he's hearing and listening and interacting with me. Then above that wing of that matrix, we then go into the environment. If you and I were in Darfur, we would not be functioning like this. If we were malnourished, we'd not be functioning like this. We would be very different people, even though we had the same skin. Likewise, the other part of the environment is our family, our personal environment, our jobs. Those have tremendous impacts on who we are at this exact instant. If you were having problems at work, which I'm sure you're not, but if you were having problems at work...
Let me talk to you about that.
Yeah, here's my card, by the way, actually. Oh, whoops, that's the wrong card. But in any case, that could be impact. You might not be listening well right now because you're worrying or fretting about what's going on at work. And then the final wing of the matrix is our spirituality, our framework for meaning. For some people, that's an anthropomorphic god or a goddess. For other people, it's their family, their country, but it's what gives meaning to their lives. But that, too, impacts on who you and I are as individuals and as men.
So this is a way of looking at ourselves, looking at people, and when they have distress or discomfort, trying to sort of look at these different wings and different pieces to say, how do you locate this?
Absolutely. I mean, the beauty of this is, and what is very hope-producing to me, is this means we change every millisecond. We're all different people than we were just 5 minutes ago. Yeah. That, to me, is very hope-producing, because it means that change, whether we want it or not, can occur. And if we can learn how to work this matrix, sometimes I think you can really do great problem solving out of this. And that's one thing that can really help men who sometimes, I think, want quick answers. And the quick answers are not always there. But if you actually learn the matrix, you can really sometimes have better problem solving. One thing I have to add is that's special about, I think, this way of looking at people and problem solving, is that if you change one wing of the matrix, because they interact, you might actually change the other wings. So if I'm having a problem biologically, you know, sometimes I have to address that biologically, perhaps with medications or yoga or something like that. But sometimes making a change spiritually, I'm convinced can actually change the biology of the brain.
Sure.
Vice versa, if I'm having trouble at work, maybe I'm having anger problems with a supervisor, maybe there's something that could be changed biologically with me that actually, maybe an antidepressant, that would take away my irritability. So we're always looking for these matrix effects.
Yep. So they aren't necessarily, you know, completely discrete areas that you can, you say, oh, that's the problem. I'm going to go over there and tinker with that, because these are all interdependent.
Absolutely. In fact, one of the big problems is that very frequently, you think, or we think, we know where the problem is. But that isn't where the problem is.
It's where it's manifesting, maybe, but the source is somewhere
because
else.
The source is someplace else.
Not where the solution is, at least.
Perfect example of that. You can have a couple come into you for couples therapy. And the woman says, you know, I really love my husband, but over the past 7 months, he's gotten progressively irritable. To be honest with you, I think he's sort of psychologically or verbally abusive to myself and my children. It's almost like he's not the same guy, and he's drinking a lot. And you know what? As much as I love him, I can't stay with him unless we can fix this. Now, if I'm the couples therapist, I might turn and say, oh, geez, Forrest, what do you think about that? And, you know, he might well up. And he'd say, well, it's pretty much true, but I don't know exactly what's happening. I'm doing the best I can. I'm willing to try to do something about it. Now, a healer or a therapist who isn't a matrix healer might immediately say, the problem's the marital alliance. Let's go and try to help that. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. But a matrix healer would make sure that they sat down with each of these people individually and walked right through each of these wings of their matrix. So with a man, they might say, well, is there anything going on with you biologically, medically? Do you have an MD you're seeing? He says, well, I don't think there's any major problems. I've always had migraine headaches, and those are particularly bad now. And so as the therapist sorts through this wing, the biological wing, says, well, tell me about that. And he says, well, they're a little different than they used to be. You know, usually migraines are pounding and then come and go. And he says, this I can't shake. It's with me all the time. So the therapist says, well, why don't you see your GP about that? When they go to the family practitioner says, geez, that doesn't sound like a migraine to me. Scans his brain and discovers that he has a slow-growing frontal lobe tumor. Now, if you have a slow-growing frontal lobe tumor in your brain, you get irritable, angry, might become a person who uses profanity that never used to, and frequently they drink to cover up their symptoms. And the truth of the matter is, the problem was not in that marriage. The problem is in a biological maelstrom occurring in this guy's brain. What a shame for the therapist to miss that, because you could do 7 months of couples therapy. They might communicate better, but that tumor is growing.
So it really calls upon some collaborative thinking, or sort of holistic thinking, and then professional collaboration.
Ultimate in holistic thinking. It's really the idea that everything is boundarily, I don't know if this is a word, without boundaries, I'll go that way, without boundaries, and interacts, and so you're constantly trying to see where these processes can interact and sometimes benefit each other.
So in your experience, you know, since we are here in the men's room, you know, let's really put that lens on things. I mean, how do you see this playing out with men you've worked with, or the stories you've heard? You know, how does, you know?
Well, there's all sorts of different things. Some of the things have to deal with where I think depressions can come from. They can come from each of these wings. But a major thing is also how we as men approach the concept of being depressed, and whether that's easy to accept or not easy to accept. I don't like to stereotype into all men and all women feel this way. In general, I think men have a harder time accepting depression. And
why is that, do you think? I mean, I know that some men feel like that it's some indication of weakness.
Oh, absolutely. I think that it's sort of, you ought to be able to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. And one of the problem is that I think men in our culture, we're not taught where depressions come from. And so we focus on the idea that if I'm depressed, it must be something about me.
It's an issue of character or will.
Or something. Or occasionally some other men take the other attitude, it's everybody else's fault, which is equally problematic.
It's not depression, it's everybody giving me a hard time.
My boss is a pain in the butt, and he's the problem. I don't have a drinking problem. Yeah, sure. But one of the things that is difficult, I think, for men, but this is also true for women, is that I think depression can come from any of these wings of this matrix. You know, if suddenly I'm losing faith in my God because maybe I've developed an illness and I don't understand why I've got, that could cause me to be depressed. Okay. I'm absolutely convinced that some depressions are biological in nature, and that means that the brain itself is malfunctioning. If you think about it, there's 100 billion brain cells in each of your heads. I think in yours too. We'll check the count on that. I'm not sure of the count with you, but at least 100 billion in the norm. I mean, that's a number that's like, it doesn't even mean anything to me because it's so wildly huge. Each of those brain cells has roughly 10,000 connections. That means that a typical brain has 100 trillion connections. It dwarfs any computer that's ever been made. Now, you know how many computers work well for 2 years. Hello, you know, I don't know, show me one. And you can imagine that that's with, you know, connections that are hard. The connections in a brain are goo. So it's ridiculous to think that the human brain does not malfunction. And when it malfunctions, you sometimes have seizures or whatever, but sometimes you have depressions. For a lot of men, the idea that, hey, I got a good job, I've got a good family, I've got a good income, and then they suddenly, and they cannot explain it, become overwhelmingly depressed. It's unfathomable to them that there's anything wrong except for with them as people. When what's actually going on is, you know, the part of the brain that deals with mood is not functioning well, and that's causing that particular type of depression.
So the sort of this matrix, the way of looking at the whole person, all these different wings of someone's life, may be a little more accessible to some men. Like they can say, oh, well, maybe it's this piece over here, this piece over here. Where it's just saying.
I think men like the problem solving that comes from looking at us as matrices that are constantly shifting. It's actually very appealing to men.
And then there's the movie reference too. You know.
Oh, the Matrix! Bullets flying. Yes, but that's a different story.
Well, I think that's true. I think it's because it's a way of conceptualizing this that I think I can see where it would appeal to someone who is more systems oriented, more interested in understanding things as a construct in that way.
Right. And it's also a way, you hear about people saying that they think out of the box or they're particularly creative. Actually, anybody who's thinking out of the box is probably a matrix thinker. They might not call it that, they might not have that paradigm in mind, but that's why they look like they're thinking out of the box.
And I think the box that a lot of men are in has to do with very limited definitions of happiness or how to achieve happiness or what it takes to be happy. I think that this is can be really eye-opening, I think, for a lot of men to be able to say, oh, there's more. It isn't just work.
Oh,
it isn't just how I would define success or having this beautiful family. That's not That's not it.
Absolutely. I had a young man when I was early in my practice, decades ago. That's a little scary, but a long time ago, who came in and quite depressed and anxious. College student at a major university, a very highly touted university, great student. Already gotten into a graduate school, etc. But quite depressed, also an All-American. And he was very, very rigid. I mean, he was tough, a great athlete, by the way, tough, single-minded. And when I sat, he looked like he was almost a soldier at attention when I was talking to him. Very hard for him to laugh and take life seriously. But one of the things that was fascinating about him as the therapy went on is one day he came in and he turned to me and he said, Dr. Shea, I figured something out. He says, and this is one of the first times he spontaneously smiled. He sat there. I figured something out. I go, what's that? And he says, you know what? Finding success is not happiness. He says, finding happiness is being a success. And he said, that's really what I need to shift my gears on. He says, I've spent my life being an All-American, getting straight A's. And he said, but I suddenly realized that, you know what, it's finding the happiness that will determine whether I'm successful or not. He did terribly, but no, I'm kidding.
He was miserable.
No, he actually did very, very well.
But I mean, that's just it. It's confusing the end with the means.
Oh, absolutely. And
our time is winding down. We have a couple minutes left, though. But so where in 2 minutes or less, how do people find happiness? I mean, we've talked about sort of looking at these different pieces of the matrix for things that might be out of balance, but how do people move forward towards happiness?
Well, I'll tell you a real quick story. Is hopefully cut the time. You can cut me off if it goes too long. But you can do a thing you simply call matrix spin, which is whenever you're particularly unhappy, try to find out exactly what's causing that. A beautiful example of this was I was preparing the book, and I had a title for the book, and titles are very important to authors. You think the book's dependent. And I woke up at 8:30 on a day, great spirits, ready to write. I had a sharp deadline, and my editor calls at 8:30. That's a very bad sign. Don't answer the phone. And the editor turns to me and says, Shawn, I looked at your title for your book, and I think it sucks. He says, and I'll tell you what, I shared it with 7 other people here, and we all hate it. And I said, oh, it's a super way to wake up.
Right.
Great way. Great. So anyway, I was very upset about that. I was convinced that the book was going to be ruined because they were going to, you know, this was a Pulitzer-winning title, et cetera, et cetera. So, but I had to get this thing done, this chapter, this day. But now I'm already getting upset. I'm going to show you how, as men, we can wind ourselves up. I then went down and I told my wife about that, and she said, don't worry about it, the title will work out. And I'm driving, coming to Keene. I usually was writing at that time at Brubaker's at Keene State, actually. And just as I'm driving away, my wife goes, hey, by the way, you know, as far as a Cape Cod vacation this summer, you know, maybe we should go someplace else because we've gone there a lot. Just keep that, think about that. And I said, no problem, I'll think about it. About 100 yards down the driveway, or I mean down the road, I go, hey, this is a problem. How can my wife, how dare she? You know, I love that darn, I can't believe she did this to me. We're going to Cape Cod, I don't. So I turn around, go back in, strut into the kitchen, and I say, Susan, we've got to talk about this Cape Cod business. You know? And she goes, what Cape Cod business? And she goes, well, you don't want to go to Cape Cod? And she goes, and at first she bit. And she said, well, look, if it means so much to you, we won't go to the damn Cape Cod. Right. But then all of a sudden she turned to me and she said, and she figured out what was going on. She said, hey, you know what, Shawn? She says, don't worry about the title. We're going to Cape Cod. She says, what's important about your book is what's inside it, not between the covers. It says you and your editor will work something out. And by the way, she's been totally rational, which when I'm totally irrational, I really was furious. I can't believe she did that. Okay. So in any case, I then head out the door. And I gave her one of those little hugs. It's like, it means I love you, but I'm really mad at you. I mean, we've done that. And now here's where the matrix spin comes in. Look at where I was at. I had a deadline, and now I had made a problem for myself because you can't write when you're that upset. So I just did a little matrix spin, walked through the whole thing wing by wing. Biologically, I said to myself, hey, you are wound up. Take 10 deep breaths, and that just settled me down. Psychologically, I said, you know, what are you telling yourself? And I was telling myself this book would be a failure without the title, that my career was over. All ridiculous stuff. And when I said, you know what, it's just a title, you come up with a good one. That settled me down. But the major one is I said, you know what are you doing with Susan? She's your main source of comfort. Go back in there, apologize, and give her a real hug.
So you turned around again and went back?
I went back in, gave her a real hug.
All right.
And then, of course, she's able to comfort me, which is what I needed, which I was robbing myself of. The very thing that could help me, I was attacking. I then went into the environmental wing, and I said, well, the problem is with the publishing house, but that's something that can be worked out. Don't do anything now. You know, I was ready to get in the phone and say, here's what we need to do. Settle down. And spiritually, I said, you know what? I love Gregorian chant. Let's sit down for a second, listen to a little Gregorian chant. I've got to tell you, I settled dramatically. Was then able to hop into the car to Brubaker's, get my cafe latte double, and write a nice chapter.
Well,
so that's a matrix spin, and it can really help.
That's good. And useful, and I'll have to remember to check my matrix next time.
You better. I'm a little concerned about your matrix. Just looking at you, know, just
and I can relate to
aura as well.
You know, we can relate to your story because when we were talking about the title for this program being The Men's Room, we got similar advice that it was an extraordinarily bad idea.
Oh, really?
And everybody that people,
why was that?
Everyone they talked to thought it was a terrible name, and we've, you know,
and obviously it was a great success.
It's a huge success.
So we have to wrap up.
Hey, great.
But it's been a pleasure.
Oh, super honor to be here. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well,
thank
you for joining us, Shawn. Maybe we'll look forward to
and you were going to mention something about the talk.
And then, and you're going to be talking more about,
thank you for reminding us.
About happiness.
At Keene State, I'll be presenting this Tuesday at 7 o'clock, I think it is, in the Mabel Brown room. It's for the students in the faculty, but open to the entire community. And it's all about the human matrix and how we can learn to work with it.
Great.
So we have like 1 minute left.
Okay.
We have to, in 1 minute, what are we going to say?
In 1 minute, we're going to say, please check out our Open Men's Support Group at the Life Arts Center. Life Art donates that space. Thank you very much.
That's right.
Thank you, Tim Stillman, for our beautiful hats.
I still want one.
And if you need any more information about us, about this program, or about our group, please go to www.mmrconline.org.
That's right. All right. Well, thanks for joining us in the men's room.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Well, hey, that was really fun.
Thanks.
Yeah, you guys are great. This is a super idea.
Great interview.
And I think that march is a great idea.
Yeah.